This is going to be one of those sermons where I'm going to reference something we talked about, probably. Would you like to preach? I got it. I'm all good. Thanks, Lord. I'm going to reference a sermon we talked about at the beginning of this year, and just by way of quick reminder, here's the story. It's an Epiphany kind of sermon, and if you were here that week, you remember the biggest thing for me that had really hit me as we hit that part of our year this year was the fact that God is so near to us all the time, and all we have to do is turn the light on and notice God is there. And, I've just been thinking about that this week. Thinking about God's presence in our life, thinking about the way in which God is so near to us every time we get up in the morning, every time we go to bed, through every step we make during the day, God is near. And it's so easy for us to forget that, to get caught up in the big moments that we think we're looking for. It's so easy for us to lose focus on where God is because of where we feel like God should be. So this morning's sermon is one about our focus, about where our attention is in our lives of faith, about where our attention is as individuals. I don't think all my words are right. And about where our attention might be in our life together. So we're going to read a story out of Luke 9. It's the Transfiguration story, a story where Jesus takes with him a few of his closest disciples, and they go up to a mountaintop, and there they witness something miraculous that readjusts their focus in a way that helps them to prepare for what comes next. About 8 days after Jesus said these things, he took Peter, John, and James and went up on a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes flashed white like lightning. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, were talking with him. They were clothed with heavenly splendor and spoke about Jesus' departure, which he would achieve in Jerusalem. That's where they're headed after they leave this mountain. Peter and those who were with him were almost overcome by sleep, but they managed to stay awake and saw his glory as well as the 2 men with them. Pay attention to that word, overcome. In this translation, that word overcome appears twice. At this point, the disciples are almost overcome by sleep, but they're going to be overcome in a different way in just a moment. As the 2 men were about to leave Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, it's good that we're here. We should construct 3 shrines, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But he didn't know what he was saying. Peter was still speaking when a cloud overshadowed them, and they entered the cloud, and they were overcome with awe. Some versions of the Bible say they were terrified. But they've been overcome with sleep, and now they're overcome with something completely different as they go through this experience. Then a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." And even as the voice spoke, Jesus was found alone. They were speechless, and at the time, told no one what they had seen. This is a passage for me about focus. It's about the distractions in our life. It's about the way in which we allow ourselves to be overcome by so many things that are not God. So the disciples come up to the mountaintop on this day, and they were overcome with sleep. They've been on this wondrous journey with Jesus. They have followed and they have listened and they have worked hard and they are tired. And they get to that mountaintop and they are overcome with sleep. They're distracted from where God is right in front of them in that very moment. I imagine it that maybe they were sitting there and their eyes were clouding over and they were kind of nodding off a little bit. And all of a sudden they look up and Jesus, who was standing there alone, is standing there with Moses and Elijah, who've been dead for a long, long time. And all of a sudden they're wide awake. They're overcome by, maybe they were terrified, or this version says they're overcome with awe. And their eyes are open. That's what we talked about a few months ago, wasn't it? The way in which our eyes are open to God and our midst. Their eyes are open. In this passage, the disciples are almost like a pendulum, swinging from one side to the next, aren't they? They're overcome with sleep, and then they're overcome with awe, and then they're maybe not sure what to do, and then in the middle of all of it, Peter says, "I know exactly what we'll do. We'll build 3 houses, one for Jesus, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Because this is such a moment, and I want to stay in this moment, in this place, forever." And the biblical writer tells us that Peter did not know what he was saying. When was the last time God in a way that changed your focus, that changed your perspective? When was the last time you experienced God in a way that it made you want to say, God, no matter what else is going on around me, I want to stay right here? Maybe it's been a while for you, and if so, I hope you look for those small moments in life. Maybe a moment driving to work this week when everything around you is quiet, or maybe a random act of kindness in a stranger, or even in a friend. I hope you will find those times when you are overcome with awe of God's love for you and God's presence in your life. But don't let that feeling of being overcome become a distraction. You see, that's what God does in this passage. Peter's swinging everywhere. He's sleepy, he's awake, he's terrified, he's excited, he's not sure what to do, he wants to build a house, and all of a sudden, in the middle of it, God speaks. In the voice of a cloud, God speaks and says, "This is my son. Listen to him." It's just that simple. This Jesus is my son. Listen to him. And the focus shifts. You see, where Peter was looking everywhere he wanted to look and everything he felt like he should be doing, God speaks into the middle of that pendulum swinging back and forth and says, "This is Jesus. Listen to him. He will show you the way to go." We all have those mountaintop moments. We all have those moments that sometimes we label as God, and sometimes we even label as peace or as joy or as happiness. We have those moments when the love and the light of God is so crystal clear that we want to stay there forever. For our youth, often these moments are mission trip kind of moments. I knew they were for me growing up. They're the moments when you feel God's nearness and you just don't want to leave. And yet God calls to each one of us. Listen. Listen. Because our lives of faith are not about those mountaintop moments. They're about the moments that come after. Our lives of faith are not about the times only when we are happy and joyous and filled with the sense of God's presence, but our lives are about the way in which we listen to that call of Christ that calls us to come down off the mountaintop into a world that is hurting, into a world that might never know that it has the opportunity to venture to that mountaintop as well. God calls us to listen and to take a few steps into a world that needs to know of a God that loves them immeasurably. We've talked a little bit about the state of our church. Not our church here in Plano, but the church, the big picture church. And if you've done any of the reading in pretty much any magazine you can find over the past 6 months, you will have seen this research that we already know that the church is declining. The United Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Baptist Church, even our non-denominational churches are declining in membership. They're reaching a point in which they're asking themselves the same questions we are asking ourselves. Who is God calling us to be? Is where is God calling us to go? They're searching for the same thing we are searching for, and they're striving to listen to the voice of God. You've read the research that said the nuns in our world are increasing. The nuns being those people who claim they have no religious affiliation at all. And I wonder, in the face of that kind of statistic, where we feel like our place is. Because the disciples on that mountaintop, just as you and I, have a choice. God leaves us with a choice. God doesn't say, I will force you to walk this way and do what Jesus wants you to do. Rather, God says, this is Jesus. Listen to him. And then God leaves it up to us. It's your choice. It's my choice. It's our choice together. Will we choose to follow where God is calling? Will we choose to listen? Or will we choose to stand by and wait for somebody else to do it? It's the amazing thing about our lives of faith It's that God gives you the choice to listen, and God also gives you the choice to walk away. And I know you as a congregation, I know our church well enough to know that we are not the kind of church that will sit there and say, this is somebody else's job, this is someone else's problem. Rather, we know that we have a place because we have been listening together to that voice of God for some time that's been calling us to do something, to reach out and make a difference in someone's life. That's why we call this service Impact. Because it's not just about the impact God makes on us in worship as we gather together, but it's about the impact that God has called us to make on a world around us who needs to know that God loves them. We call ourselves Impact because we realize that we each have a place in that. That God is calling to each one of us to listen to the opportunities that are in front of us, those make an impact moments, as we call them, and that God wants us to have the courage to step into those with faith, and with belief, and with hope, and with love. So this morning in the sanctuary, and also here at Impact, we're going to talk about an opportunity that's before our church. And it's before our whole church. It's an opportunity to step into one of those communities where there is no United Methodist Church presence. It's an opportunity for us to follow the voice of God and to listen for a place where God might be calling us to be. There's a town 7 miles east of McKinney in Princeton. Have you ever driven through Princeton? It's right off 380. If you drive through Princeton, this is what you'll see. You'll see some new subdivisions on the McKinney side, and as you go through the center of town, it will look very much like a small town, Texas town. Now, you may think in Plano that many of us don't have experience with this, but I went to college at West Texas A&M that was in the town of Canyon, that's about 30 miles south of Amarillo. So if you think Amarillo is kind of small, Canyon's really small. And it looks like Canyon to me in the center of that town. It's a small town, rural field. And as you come out on the other side, there's some $1 million subdivisions, but the most impressive thing right there off 380 is a huge high school that has been built. And when you start to read and think about what's going on there in Princeton, you realize that there is a huge mission field, as we would call it. There is a huge opportunity for someone to step into that place and be the hands and feet of Christ. So on Monday, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we'll talk a little bit more about this in depth. And what we'll say is that our bishop has asked us to consider the opportunity to go and transplant our DNA, our mission and our passion for following God, our mission and our passion for loving God and serving others and transforming the lives around us. Our bishop has asked us to consider that opportunity for what it might mean for Christ United Methodist to plant a satellite church in Princeton, a town where there are plenty of people, and yet there's no church that's quite like this one. It's an amazing opportunity. We've done some research this week, and Don told on himself, so I'll tell on him too. Don's our senior pastor. He said in the sanctuary services that he thought the population of Princeton was 6,500, and he's right. The technical population is 6,500 people within the city limits of Princeton. But when we were talking about this in staff this week, and I said, if you run a population of Princeton in a 5-mile radius, there are 17,500 people. Don said to me, I don't believe you. And so I had to take a minute and show him the statistics, and I had all the staff in the room who were all Googling different numbers. So if you Google it, we will all come up with a different number, I'll tell you that. But I can promise you that within the city limits of Princeton, there are 6,500 people, and within a 5-mile radius, there are 17,500 people, and that's projected to grow to over 29,000 in the next 10 years. And can you imagine a town of that size in which there's no United Methodist Church? Can you imagine a town of that size and the difference it might make for a team of people to work together to say, we're going to do church in a big church kind of way. We're going to do church in a way that lives out a passion and a mission. We're going to do church in a way that follows that example of Christ. We're going to do church in a way where we don't just stay comfortable comfortable in our mountaintop experiences, and yet we take a step out in faith and in courage to reach out and do something different, to help a brother or a sister who might need to know of this love of God. Can you imagine what that would look like? There are a lot of questions about this project, and I know that better than probably anybody else. I have a lot of questions about this project. And I know you as Impact Community are going to have questions about this that I can answer for you here better than I can in a meeting on Monday night. And so I want to answer those a little bit. Because one of the things I've heard as we started to talk about this is that Impact is still so young. Full Court was started 10 years ago, but we've only been in this space going on 2 years. Why do we need a new project? I'm going to tell you why I believe we do. There's 2 reasons. Number one, the work here that we have begun is going to continue exactly the way we have been doing it. And we're going to continue to grow. I had a meeting with the leadership team this week, and I wish you could see what happens when we meet. We stopped meeting at the church because we like each other so much we want to go out and have dinner somewhere else, and we figure we might meet somebody who asks what we're doing, and we can tell them about Impact. So we meet outside, and typically we take over the restaurant in about 20 minutes because we're just loud, right? Well, this week we were meeting, and the ideas are floating around the table, and I have to tell you how excited I am about us having the opportunity to step out in our Plano community. We're looking at adopting a patch of highway off Spring Creek that won't be a huge time commitment from us, but will be something that we can join together and do that not only helps better our community from a physical standpoint, but allows us to share with somebody else, hey, that's my patch of highway right there. We're talking about some things we're going to do this summer that may be karaoke nights here at the church. You have to giggle a little more. Not really. Karaoke nights here at the church. You know, July we pop popcorn anyway, so what happens if we extend that a little bit? If we pop some more popcorn and we make this an opportunity where families and multiple generations and grandparents whose grandkids live out of town can come together and have an evening of fellowship and of fun and just enjoy being the body of Christ together. The work we're going to do is going to continue, not because of anything I'm doing, but because of who you are. Because of who you are and the way you live out faith in this community and the community of God. So one thing I don't want you to worry about a whole lot is what it's going to do to Impact. Because anything that happens that we work on together for a satellite campus in Princeton or anywhere else is going to be something that is going to make us stronger. Because we know one of the best ways that we get stronger together is when we give something to someone else. When we do something for someone else. And what a powerful expression of faith for us as a community to say, this is something we're going to do, not for us, but because we know it's needed. Because we hear that voice of God calling. Because we have a clear focus on who we are and what it means to make disciples of Jesus Christ. So one reason this will work is because of who you are. The second reason this will work is because just in the way in which our life together is formed, this gives us another opportunity, another outlet, another chance to use the gifts and skills that are in this congregation and the gifts and skills that are already in Princeton in a way that weds them together in a powerful expression of faith. I'm not worried about losing people. I'm not worried about how much it will cost, even though surely Peter didn't say that on the mountain, did he? I think we should build 3 shrines, one for Jesus, one for Moses, one for Elijah. But how much will that cost us? Those are questions that need to be answered. But when our focus is clear on who we are and on who God is, those are questions that we can answer in time. Those are questions we can answer with facts. Those are questions we can answer and then keep our focus on where we're called to be. So don't allow questions to become a distraction from your events. Ask them, please, because they're important questions. And we'll be answering lots of them on Monday night. But don't allow them to distract you from the vision and the passion that our bishop has seen, that I'm excited about, and I hope we see together. Impact is young. I'll be the first person to tell you that. We're only a year and a half in this space. We have a lot of growing to do. And so, we might be young, but we're not stupid, are we? We understand that there's a world that's hurting. We understand we have a part to play. And so there's something to be said about spiritual maturity in this. It makes all the difference. There's a pastor at Riverside Church in New York City who once wrote a poem about vision. Ernest Campbell was his name, and he wrote this poem about vision and about maturity in particular, and about what it means for us to have the maturity to see beyond ourselves and to allow us to see a bigger picture. So I'm going to read a little bit of this to you, and then I'm going to ask you to read the last one. To be young is to study in schools you did not build. To be mature is to build schools in which you will not study. To be young is to swim in pools you did not dig, and to be mature is to dig pools in which you will not swim. To be young is to sit under trees you didn't plant. To be mature is to plant trees under which you will not sit. To be young is to dance to music you did not write. To be mature is to write music to which you will not dance. And would you read this last stanza together with me? To be young is to benefit from a church you did not make. To be mature is to make a church from which you might not benefit. It's my hope and prayer that as you consider this project, as you ask questions, I hope you'll email those to me. I hope you'll talk to me. I hope you'll come Monday night at 7 and be in the sanctuary. I hope you'll come and learn a little bit more. And I hope you'll begin to see this vision. That what we're talking about in building something else is about coming off the mountain. What we're talking about in reaching out to a community in which there is no United Methodist Church, what we're talking about is taking a step off the mountaintop into a world where lives are hurting, where good news needs to be told, and where God has put it on you and I to make a difference. On a large scale, this is our opportunity to make a big impact. And I hope you'll consider it that way. I hope you'll think about the way in which God calls you to make an impact in your everyday life. But there are only a few times when we have the opportunity to do something like this big that will impact the whole community. Don ended his sermon by saying this morning. Now it's our turn. He talks a little bit about Paul and how Paul went to Rome and Corinth and Ephesus. How the case could be made that there didn't need to be a church in all of those places, and yet Paul knew that there were people in all of those places who needed the church. And the same case is true here. There are people in so many places across our immediate vicinity who need the church. And God has given us a choice to make. We hear that voice of God calling us to focus. This is Christ. Listen to Him. And the choice is ours. Will we stand by and allow someone else to do the work, or will we step into that greater call that God has given us, stepping into God's vision for all of it to be possible? Almighty God, we thank you for the gift of vision. We thank you for the times in life when you turn the lights on, so to speak. We thank you for the times in which your presence is so near to us that we know that no matter where we might go from that moment on, we have been forever changed. God, thank you for loving us enough to think of us highly enough to equip us for a task like this. God, we pray that it might not be our plans together, but it might be your plan. It might be your vision. It might be your way to reach a new community. And that when we begin to see that vision, you might give us the courage and the faith to step into it. Not just with one toe, but with both feet. God, we trust all our plans to you. We trust our plans for our lives to you. We trust our plans for our families to you. We know that we struggle to hold on to control for so much in our lives, and yet, God, in this moment, we're turning all of that over. We're repeating to ourselves those words of Jesus, saying, thy will be done, thy kingdom come on this earth. And God, by the power of your grace, by the gifts you've placed in each one of us, would you help us to be a part of the building of that kingdom?